Lara, welcome to the HP Dennis YouTube channel. Today we have in the garage is a 2006 Jaguar XK with a 4.2 normally aspirated engine. This is a V8 engine, so obviously a V8, 8 cylinders. We're using the BG Platinum field service tool today. Intake manifolds over the history of motor vehicles have changed greatly from the era of carburetor, where literally at the throttle, carburetor's job was to atomize fuel for delivery, and the atomized fuel would mix with the air in the intake and into the cylinder. With the fuel, obviously petroleum in this engine and in petrol vehicles, petroleum by its very good chemical makeup is actually a very good cleaner. Wouldn't recommend to use as a cleaner, but as a chemical it is a great cleaner. So in the era of carburetors, the atomization of the fuel mixing with the air in the intake relatively kept the intakes clean. Obviously, since the 60s, when fuel injection was brought into motor vehicles, and then more mainstream in the 90s, and now just throughout every vehicle fuel injection. With the advancement of fuel injection, even with non-direct injection of fuel, the fuel is injected into the ports, so it's called port injection technically. So at the bottom end of the intake manifold is where the injectors are usually held in a port injection setup. This does provide a certain amount of cleaning. As I said, petroleum is a great cleaner. It does provide a certain amount of cleaning of the back of the valve, valves, and around the ports. But ultimately, the rest of the intake is not being cleaned. Air is coming in, and we'd love it to be clean air. In an ideal world, it would be clean air, but ultimately it's not. And for a few reasons, I'm going to go over them now. Firstly, everything about the car and the modern engine now for the last 30, 40 years is in emissions derivative. That means that the manufacturer is compounded by legislation to make the motor vehicle as emission friendly as it can. Obviously, we're now in the era of EVs, so that's not a problem. But tailpipe emissions is not a problem, but how to get the electricity is. But back to internal combustion engine. The delivery of air, as I into the intake, it was lovely and clean. It would be great. Lovely, cool, clean air going into your engines, the lighters. Unfortunately, with emission legislation, manufacturers have had to work out ways of doing certain things. Number one is EGR, exhaust gas circulation. There's no rocket science behind an EGR valve. It literally is a tap that connects the exhaust pipe to the intake, or a valve technically. But when the car under load would have no EGR, the tap is closed, so there's no exhaust gases going in. When the car is idling or at low speed and not much load on the engine, the management system would have the EGR open and there's EGR gas going in. Use EGR to reduce the NOx and NOx, but bring the cylinder temperature down. Exhaust gases generally have very little oxygen left in them after the combustion phase. So when the exhaust gas goes into the cylinder, there's no bang. Effectively, that's what they're hoping for, which brings down the cylinder temperature. Next of all, after the EGR, we then have PCV, positive crankcase ventilation valve. Now, positive crankcase ventilation. So the crankcase, the manufacturers have to, in a lovely word, you'd have a catch can, and that crankcase ventilation valve will be going back to that catch can, and you would catch any oil vapors or contaminants into your can. Every periodically, dump the can, clean it out, put it back, and away you go. Manufacturers have decided not to go down that route, and they send the crankcase pressure and emissions back into the intake. And if anyone knows anything about oil, the number one enemy of oil is fuel, and then second is moisture. With the crankcase ventilation venting the crank impurities back into the intake, by nature it's dirty, contaminated oil. And this is why oil changes every 10,000 kilometers are vital for everything, and always should be done, no matter what the manufacturer tells you. So, with dirty exhaust gases going in via the EGR valve and dirty vapors via the PCV valve, the intake is under attack constantly of dirt and debris. Also, when you don't change the air filter regularly enough, or with a high quality air filter, this also can have debris and dirt and impurities going into the intake. It's not something they want. I said, ultimately, you'd love to have nice, clean, clear air going in for best condition. So, what does all this mean? Ultimately, the intake is under extreme contamination, and we need to clean it out. Some manufacturers, especially in the diesel world, are really struggling with intake restrictions and blockages. Petrol are not so bad, but does happen. When it gets so bad, no chemical in the world will clean it, and ultimately you have to go in and clean it with a medium that will basically break the carbon away from the intake. At HMS here, we try to follow the way the medical world works, and prevention is better than cure. So we're always trying to keep the intake contaminant free as best we can, and clean the intake as best we can. On this petrol engine, we're using BG Platinum Servitol. On the V8 here, on this Jaguar V8 4.2, it's very, very simple connection. There's a vacuum pipe on top of the intake there, right at the throttle flap, and on the inside of the throttle flap where the vacuum would be. And we just literally disconnect that, and we disconnect the vacuum pipe that's feeding the servo for the braking. Car not going to move, it's going to stay still. And we connect the BG Platinum till into the intake there. I've used this a few times now, and it's an excellent tool. I love when tools work, absolutely, but I also love when the product that we use is really, really safe. I say we've used this, and thank God to the day it's been very, very safe, and it is very, very safe. It's coupled inside the car with the BG Revit tool. So when I start it up, you will hear the engine periodically revving. It's actually a tool doing that. No one's in the car, and I'm not going to get into the car. The way the tool delivers is you fill up the delivery chamber here with this product here. This is the BG air intake and valve combustion chamber cleaner. When we're servicing cars and maintenance wise, we just use one can and then we use a can of 44K in the fuel tank. Pour it into the fuel tank, and we use one can of this. That's for a maintenance every year. We haven't seen this car before, so we're going to use 2 of these and the one can into the fuel tank. While we're doing the service, we're also going to change the engine oil filter. And we've used an oil flush, the BG EPO oil flush in the engine oil. The EPO engine flush only works after 90 degrees Celsius. So the engine's going to be running for quite a while. We're going to use 2 of these. It's vacuum delivered into the car under vacuum. So it's going to take a while. So the temperature will come and the car will be revving periodically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the car back up. I'm not got the camera. I'm going to set the car back up. I'm going to set the car up with the rev tool, and then we're going to come back on. So we're back at the car. I've literally just opened the delivery valve like that. This is on, and now the so-called vacuum of the engine is slipping in the chemical from the delivery chamber into the intake. You can hear the rabbit tool, the BG rabbit tool working away. Working away. Just revving the throttle. We don't actually have a vacuum in the intake. Technically, it's a pressure less than atmosphere. The only place the vacuum relies is in the vastness of space. So from a technical point of view, it's not a vacuum, it's a pressure less than atmosphere. So the product's being delivered by the chamber into the intake. It's swirling around the intake and it's cleaning the carbon off the intake, beside the water intake. Think of a cylinder and out the exhaust. You have the exhaust particularly in the exhaust system, tracking system. That's really it. It's that simple. Onto what you see as a vacuum port being delivered under pressure less than vacuum, really, and it's cleaning the intake and in the valves, in the top of the pistons, and else to the exhaust. Okay, we have the 44K in the fuel tank, in the fuel pump, the fuel lines, the injectors, and we have a kind of EPR in the oil, cleaning the oil rings, cleaning any contaminants in the crankcase. So it's really a triangulation of cleaning inside, fuel system, and under the crankcase. That's about all I have to say at the moment. If you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe so you can make more videos. And if I can know if I'm doing wrong, put them in the comments. You can have a conversation and we'll all end up. Thanks for watching.